All right. Good morning, everyone. Oh, good morning. I actually got response. Oh, that doesn't happen often. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. I actually can't see you really well because of the lightning, but I assume that the room is pretty full, right? Okay. Yes, yeah. One person, the one that says good morning. Yes, I'm really full. Okay, great. Did you enjoy the keynote? I know Layla a little bit, and it was her first time. Did she do an okay job? Yeah. Oh, great. I'll point her to the recording of this. She'll love that. Okay, so the next hour is going to be less enjoyable. Hopefully not. It's going to be with me talking about real-time connected apps with .NET Maui, Blazor, and SignalR. So hopefully you're in the right place. If not, then too bad the doors are closed, you're stuck with me. So who am I? For the people who don't know me, I always have kind of like a love-hate relationship with these kinds of slides. Anyway, I love to give a little bit of context about who I am, but I don't necessarily want to say, oh, this is me, but now bigger and on a screen. My name is Gerald. I came from the Netherlands, so not that far, and I work at Microsoft on the .NET Maui team, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You might hear a little bit of bias there. I do a little thing on YouTube as well about kind of like the same topics, Blazor, .NET Maui, a little bit of all of that. So if you want to enjoy at home a little bit more, want to know a little bit more, go like and subscribe and do all the things that Nick Chops us asks you to do. I'm going to be in trouble. And if you want to reach out, I'm on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. I'm basically on every social media with that same handle that I've chosen poorly because no one knows what it actually is. It's my name, initials, but I have a not very international name. So anyway. I'm here to talk about real-time ASP.NET with SignalR, but it's incredibly simple real-time web for ASP.NET. At least that's how it started, because now it's much more than that, right? You can use it everywhere. You can use it in, Blazor is still ASP.NET, is still web. You can use it with .NET Maui. You can even use it with Java, if that's what you want, or any other language, if it's implemented for that, or if you want to implement it yourself, if you like a challenge. This is probably pretty obvious, but this is a couple of scenarios that you can do with this, right? Everything real time, right? Because you set up a connection, that connection has to be persistent, and you go back and forth with all the things there. So co-authoring, if you are working in Microsoft Loop, that's the hot new thing, right? Then you can see all the cursors coming around. You actually also had that for Visual Studio. You don't hear an awful lot about that anymore. What was that called? You could kind of like, no one? Everyone forgot already? Sorry, live share? Was that it? Live share? So with live share, you would see all these cursors jumping around through your code as if coding wasn't hard enough. And you could see like, hey, this person is writing code here and there. That's probably why it never took off, right? But that kind of scenarios, and with Google Docs, like everything you can work together with now, right? So you can see all these different cursors and all these kinds of things. And that is something that could well make possible with SignalR, right? And if you're working with Microsoft technology, then chances are that it runs on SignalR. Actually, if you've been using Blazor, that also runs on SignalR if you're using Blazor server. Real-time location-based tracking. So if you go like Uber Eats or, I don't know, regular Uber, you see the little car moving around where they are, that stuff can definitely be made with SignalR, right? Like the connection on the phone of the driver will upload it to the server will send it to the right person that's actually waiting for that Uber driver, and there you will see, hey, the location is being updated. So that stuff is definitely something that you can make possible. Now, notifications is always one that I have to clarify to people who are not really familiar, at least with mobile development, because notifications are, a lot of things are notifications, but if you're talking about like push notifications, they are very integrated in the OS, right? So if your app is closed, typically, especially iOS is very strict with what you can run in the background. They don't allow an awful lot, and Android is cracking down more and more as well, which is a good thing if you ask me, but it's a real pain in the ass because they allowed you to do everything, and now they're like, maybe that wasn't a smart idea. I like iOS more where I'm an Apple fanboy. Anyway. So notifications is always a kind of like confusing thing. So as long as you have the app open, you can do notifications with SignalR, right? But you will have to assume that the user is looking at the screen. You can pop a notification like that. You can still do that also with push notifications, which is integrated in the OS. But what you cannot do is have that little notification at the top of the screen when your app is closed. That's not something that you can do with SignalR. right? Because that's not Apple and Google and Windows, for that matter, have like proprietary channels where you have to send push notifications through, which is a good thing because else you would get spam through it probably, because that's how the world works. They only allow things that are authorized through their servers and whatnot, so not through SignalR. But if you have that SignalR connection inside of your app, you can do kind of like notifications that way. And of course, then all of that live dashboard, maybe you have invented some company that drives around trucks, and you self-driving trucks, how cool would that be? Probably some Tesla self-driving trucks, he's probably working on that too. And you want to see where they are, right? Because they're self-driving, no one can call you and say where they are. You can project that on a live dashboard with SignalR. So what exactly is SignalR? So it's actually a wrapper around a couple of technologies. So it's a high-level thing that you lay on top of a couple of technologies that I'll show you in the next slide. And that standardizes these web technologies that were already available. And the really cool thing is that it kind of like falls back gracefully. So whenever it cannot use the top level technology that is the best and whatever, but if you're using still Internet Explorer, then that technology might not be implemented in that. So it's going to gracefully fall back to like the next technology that is in line. And you don't notice that, well, apart from like it might be a little less real time or something like that. But you shouldn't notice, and you definitely don't have to implement anything to account for any of that, basically. So that's what's really cool. Like I already mentioned, it's available for JavaScript because it's web and the web runs on JavaScript. So it's available for that. For C#, F#, even Visual Basic. Are there still people working on Visual Basic? Good, cool. No, I'm kidding. Okay, no, it's really cool because I actually will get to that. You can still do cool stuff with Visual Basic now. It hasn't gotten the love that it deserves, and I hear that a lot from customers still. So that's cool.
Now, yes, I heard it.
Yeah. Oh, it's on recording too. Oh no. And even Java, right? And it's open source. It's open protocol. So, like I said, there's probably languages on here. This is the ones that I know about that I think are kind of supported from Microsoft as well. But there are probably packages out there from people who have implemented it for their own programming language or some language that it wasn't available for. Maybe you want to do it for Rust because Rust is the hot new thing, right? So you probably want to do that. But it's all open, so you can look at the specification. You can implement your own library if that's what you want. So, like I said, it will use kind of like WebSockets because that's the latest and greatest right now. That will allow you to do all these kinds of cool real-time things. But whenever that's not available for whatever reason on one of the sites, it's going to fall back to one of these technologies and make that possible for you. So, what does that actually look like in kind of like an architectural diagram, very professional, and that always needs to have a cat because that's good. So you have that kind of like, it works, it uses the terminology with hubs. So kind of like your servers, kind of like called your hubs, and you have to have some kind of proxy object so that you know what the contract is and which functions you can actually call, right? So on the server side, you have kind of like your my server function defined with that hub that you're going to connect to. And then here it's depicted as like an ASP.NET Server application, which is typically probably going to be because that's just the easiest to whip up from Visual Studio, but it doesn't have to be, right? Because open source, open protocol, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can send something to your clients, and that client will have that hub proxy in there. It will have that kind of like contract thing so that it knows what is available on the server, what stuff can I expect to be sent to me, but also what can I send to the server, and actually that way remote invoke some stuff on the server as well. And then the server can just say, hey, clients.client, a certain ID. So if we go back to that Uber example, you want to update the location of the car, it's going to say clients because it has a client's object with all the clients in there that are connected currently. That one client with that ID, I want to do my client function. Update Uber location driver thing, blah, blah, something like that. And it's going to do that. It's going to invoke that on the client application, and it's going to move the car a little bit forward because it got new coordinates. You can provide the parameters with it, with the GPS coordinates, all that kind of stuff. The other way around works as well. Maybe there is something that you want to vote green on, I don't know what that would be. And you can say, hey, I want to do vote green, right? So you will have, like on the server side, you will have that vote green, whatever has to happen. Maybe there's a plastic box outside, you take a little green thing and you put it in there. And you have that little hub on the server side. And then from the client, you can say, hey, I want to hub connection because you have to have that persistent connection up and do vote green. It works kind of like on magic strings. That's kind of like a downside here. So you have to know the function that you want to be calling. It has to be like the correct thing right there. And you can invoke that then on the server side. So you can send something back like, hey, I want to send a message to my Uber driver with like, hey, I'm in this location. You can send it back that way, and then it will kind of like go back to this one from the server again and distribute it to the right client for that Uber driver. Like, hey, you got a chat message. Does that make sense so far? What I'm going to show you is mostly, well, not mostly, is all implemented kind of like manually, the old-fashioned way. That's how I like it. All that Azure stuff, I'll just use Visual Basic. Kidding, I'm kidding. We, of course, have an Azure service for this as well. That's very easy to enable, and that will help you kind of like scale out these things a little bit easier because you can kind of imagine that this is heavy on the resources, right? You're going to have that persistent connection, and as your app starts to get popular, then you're going to have a lot of persistent connection. So you're going to have to scale that out because there's only so many connections that you can connect to one server, right? So this Azure SignalR service makes that super easy. You can just set a couple of parameters and it will take care of that all for you. And you can just enable that and have that on your Azure account. So let's start with a little demo to show you what I mean. Take out your phones. It's actually allowed. I won't be offended. And go to gerald.fyi/vote. I would already like to ask you to not go into my super secret admin portal that I'm about to show you because that will mess up my demo. No one will be happy. I'll be crying on the stage again. It's not going to be pretty. And what you'll see is a Blazor application. Sorry, yeah, it's not a Blazor application. It's a ASP.NET, I don't know, all the flavors. Gerald.fyi/vote. All right. So you should be seeing this, but responsive and all of that because we have Bootstrap. So how do you like Gerald today? And I have this super secret admin portal. Admin is 42. There we go. And we have this cool, oh my goodness. Oh, if this is just telling me something about the green votes, then it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much. 120, 130, oh my gosh. I don't think there's 130 people here, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, there's a bucket there. You can reload, you can vote again, and you probably also found out that I wasn't gonna go, have Matt in here, so I built in a little cheat mode that whatever you vote is gonna be awesome, right? I'll be honest. But what's really cool, like you can see, like there's another bug in here that the graph kind of like not grows. It's not very responsive. People are still voting, that's cool. Stop! So what I want you to do is actually stop, like vote once, then the screen kind of locks, right? I disabled the button so you can't do anything, super secure, and whenever you reload, it will reload and it will work again, but stay stuck at the screen where your button is disabled, right? So please do that. And if I press reset now here, then you should see your screen update with like, hey, enabling again. So that should real-time push that to your devices with like, hey, it resends the actual votes. And now also my cheat mode is disabled. So I'm definitely not tracking who is voting meh here. But I'll see you after the session. So that's just a silly, simple example of how real-time you can do these kind of like funny things. No, I'm still winning on awesome. Okay. So let's see what that kind of looks like. We have this project right here. Like I said, this is just a plain ASP.NET file, new ASP.NET. I don't even know what this is. It's like, I don't know, it's not MVC, it's the other one. So we have all this. And with the program.cs, we can see already SignalR in here. Before this, well, I think long before this, you had to install a separate NuGet package for this. Now it's just inside of the box. You can just do this. You can actually, I think, do a checkbox with your ASP.NET template, like, hey, include it, yes or no. Otherwise, you could just say, hey, builder.services.add SignalR. That's it. Boom, it works. And I think for the Azure one, you have like add SignalR SignalR core. Don't do that one. That will only get you the core bits. I think there's like an extra call. Maybe you need to install a NuGet package for that one to get the Azure SignalR in here, but it's just like changing that one line of code and it should mostly just work. Probably configure like what Azure account it should hook up to, but that's it. So we have this, but now how is it going to get that hub, right? So we have this map hub here. So we're going to configure some endpoints and we're going to say, hey, map hub, which is the endpoint going to be for our SignalR server, and that is going to be found on /voting hub. So if I go back to my URL right here, I still won with awesome. Then you can go here, like, hey, to this address, voting hub, and you can say, hey, connection ID required. So it's not going to actually do anything because, you know, we're not sending it the right thing. It's not the right protocol. They're not sending it the right message. But you can see something is here, right? So voting hub is something that is actually something that we can connect to. So that's up and running. So that's how you kind of like do that. And then from that from the hub, the voting hub, you kind of like have to inherit from a hub, which is a built-in type in SignalR. So that's hand you all the basic things that you need to have to make that SignalR connection up and running. And from there, you can kind of like implement all the things that you want. So I have this voting state so that I can, this is a very simple kind of like model right here with my cheat mode enabled, of course. And then it kind of like has the votes right here, which is a simple dictionary of like, hey, the awesome and the meh, and then that's the categories, and then how many votes each of them has. So that's my simple state object. Where was I? Voting hub. It's going to keep that. And here I have actually like the calls that you can invoke on the server. So send vote, this is going to be like, you know, whatever you send me a vote. And here I'm going to disable that cheat mode for whenever I'm going to reset. Now this project is a little bit funny because it is kind of like the client and server in one. Typically you would have like a SignalR hub server, which has not really a UI, probably. That makes the most sense. But this kind of like has both. You can totally do that if that's what you need. And that's why it's kind of like sending signals to itself, right? So that makes this a little bit funny. But that doesn't really matter. You can also set up a connection to anywhere, and that should still work. So we have all of this in place, and here you can see the other way around, right? Like whenever I do disable cheat mode, it's going to send to the clients.all, so that was all of you who were connected through the phones right now. With like send async, it's going to reset, and it's going to actually like reset on your UI, like the button is disabled, yes or no, probably some other message. And it's going to send the update votes. Again, that's kind of like a funny one, which is not actually implemented in the UI that you saw, but it is implemented in the admin UI that I had right here. So it's going to update the votes with that little graph right here. Now this is implemented through plain old JavaScript. Who doesn't love that? So let's have a look at the index right here, where we have the view data homepage. Is admin, so that's my very secretive AI-powered algorithm to enable the admin portal right here. And then you can see like, hey, if is admin, then you can see like the chart, right? I just used some JavaScript chart that I found, and the reset button. So that's there. And then for your side, you can see like, hey, these two buttons with the awesome, the meh, and we hooked that up through a couple of scripts. So we all need kind of like that SignalR, right? That's just a JavaScript NPM package, whatever, how you want to get your JavaScript packages. You just install that and you can use that right here. Then if you're not an admin, you get that voting client, and else you're going to get that voting server with a bunch of stuff to set up that actual charting library. So that's not really important in this case, but here we have it. So if we go look at like those JavaScript things first, whoops. So here we have that SignalR, you don't need to worry about that. That's all stuff that's built for us. We can just use that. So here we have the server. Again, it's kind of like a weird project because it connects to itself. And you can have that connection because we need to have that to invoke actual calls and actual get events back. New SignalR hub connection builder, okay, fine. And then you can kind of like in a fluent way configure all these things with URL. Again, it's his own thing, so it's just going to connect to /voting hub on his own server. But you can have a remote address in here as well. And then I'm going to say build. I think you have stuff with like with reconnect. If the connection gets lost, it can reconnect automatically. There's all kinds of options that you can do here. And then you're going to kind of like configure the signals that you want to send and the events that you want to receive. So this connection.on update votes, which is something that I invoked here from that hub, right? Update votes here. this is what has to match with what you see here in JavaScript. It's going to invoke on whenever it receives that signal, this function. So it's going to do my chart data, data sets, vote data. So it's going to get that vote state thing. So also, again, you don't need to worry about that. It will just serialize and deserialize to JSON if that's what's needed, and just send that over the line. And you can just get it here as a complex object here in this function, and then you can work with it. So you don't need to worry about that. And then my chart.update, so it does that charting library. Then the other way around, if I press a button, the document get element by ID, who doesn't know that one? Should I have done this with JavaScript? I'm not really, sorry, with jQuery, is that still a thing? Or do we need to tailwind, or I don't know what the hip thing is right now. Document get element by ID, reset button, and you have that event listener for whenever it's going to click, and then it's going to do connection invoke. So now I'm sending something to the server, right? So you have that disable cheat mode, which is again the thing that you can see here, but now it's kind of like this method signature, right? So that has to match. It's going to find this, it's going to disable cheat mode, and it's going to invoke this function on this hub right here. And it's going to do everything that I provided in here. So that's how it works. And then whenever something happens, it doesn't happen because I'm a good developer, right? So, but whenever something happens, I log it to the console. And then at the end, you want to say, hey, connection.start. So I configured all the signals going back and forth, and now I'm going to say connection.start, and it's going to set everything up. It's going to connect and see if that works, and then everything will go into effect. And again, you can catch an error if that is what needed and retry and blah, blah, blah. Now, this one is probably not going to have any surprises. So on the client side, you're going to have that same connection builder connecting to the same thing. And now this is the buttons that you use to actually send the signals, right? So you're going to have that button. It's going to do connection invoke send vote. So you would expect in this hub right here that we have this send vote, right? So it's that one with a parameter this time, with the option that you have chosen. So that's something that you can do as well. I'll just leave it like this. See, so you can just do send vote with 0. Because this is the awesome button, so this is just hard-coded because I'm a good developer. And here you have it with 1, right? So here you have that kind of like same thing. And if you want to have more parameters with other like types, you can totally do that. If you want to add your own message right here, you can do that, but you have to make sure that on this hub that now I have to add this string foo here, and it will automatically be filled and serialized, deserialized through JSON, that kind of stuff. And it will be available here in your method. So that's how you can very easily add things here as well. It's not, super nice maybe, but it works. Now I lost my tab. I don't know where it is. But the rest is like, super clear because I already went over it, right? So connection on reset. So that's that reset signal. It's going to reset all the UI elements. And that's all how it kind of like works. So we're time for the next step. Because I have an epic demo which can also epically fail. So it's gonna be. I'm kind of excited. Well, not scared is the good word. So next thing, what is .NET Maui? Because I promised you to also show you this with .NET Maui. Who's already using .NET Maui? Yay! Yeah, all of you. Oh, that's great. It's good for the recording. No, there was definitely a good couple of people. That's good. So what is .NET Maui? Well, it's the evolution of Xamarin Forms. And Xamarin Forms has been our offering for cross-platform apps based on C# and .NET for iOS, Android, and UWP. And we also had backends for Tizen, Linux, WPF, and macOS. But we always kind of like had this image problem with Xamarin Forms. It always sounds a little bit boring, like Xamarin Forms, right? Only good for like prototyping and data entry applications, very simple things. And even like, I don't know if this, so Xamarin was a separate company before that was acquired by Microsoft. I don't know if this came from the Microsoft website or the Xamarin website before that, but you can see it's already also marketed as kind of boring, right? Like even if you don't really read what's on the bullet points, it's like Xamarin Forms is best for, gray box, a blue box, yes, exciting applications. And then if you go a layer deeper, Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, then you can create games and maps, and every app becomes better when you add a map to it, and you can do media players, right? So then you can do all the awesome stuff, which wasn't necessarily true. And there are some amazing Xamarin Forms apps out there which do a lot of things. Sean right here is going to do a session tomorrow with like gaming with .NET Maui involved and all kinds of stuff. You could do that with Xamarin Forms. And the way Xamarin Forms was architected had to do with renderers, and you had all the power to hook into those renderers and enable all the stuff that is available on those platforms. And people were doing that. But maybe there was some truth to the story that it was kind of like Xamarin Forms was architected for simple applications because the performance was getting hard hit. So if you didn't really know what you were doing, it was kind of hard to get a well-performing app and do all the amazing things. But you could absolutely, totally do that. But now, we have .NET Maui. We took all those learnings from 7-8 years Xamarin Forms and we put that into .NET Maui, which stands for Multi-Platform App UI. And the P is lowercase, else it would have been done in Maui, right? Which is also cool, but I'm not from marketing. So now this is our cross-platform app offering for C# and .NET for iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS. You can see we left out UWP because now we're based on WinUI, but who knows what will happen with that. So now we're just saying Windows, and then whenever that's going to be, we're going to support that. And macOS is kind of like our first-class citizen now, so that's really cool. So really cross-platform apps, renewed focus on desktop as well, not just mobile apps, and we have all of that. And like I said, from the outside, if you've worked with Xamarin Forms before, a lot of the APIs, almost all of them are still the same. Also for your migration paths, with everything under the hood completely changed, right? So we took those learnings, we made it more performant, we made it all better, and now you have .NET Maui, so that's really cool. That's really exciting. For probably a much better story on the history tomorrow there, is it tomorrow or Thursday? There is a talk by Richard Campbell who has a whole talk about the history of Mono and Xamarin and how it all fits together. So definitely go see that if that's what you're interested in. So if we pour that in a little marketing sauce, then .NET Maui is the most productive way to develop native apps that perform great on any of these platforms. How that works, super simple, simply put. We have on iOS this UI activity indicator, and on Android this progress bar. I always pause here. No one? That's not a bar, Android. It's a circle. All right. Yes, this is the stuff that I have to deal with as a cross-platform developer with Android. Did I mention I was an iOS fanboy? Anyway, this is the native components, and we put a little layer on top of that as .NET Maui, and we call it an activity indicator. And you specify an activity indicator, and we will take care of translating that to however it should look like on iOS, macOS, Windows, or Android, right? So you have all the properties, we map that for you, that's basically what we do, and we will port that to however it should look like on the platform. So that's a different paradigm than from other kind of like frameworks, like Flutter or Uno, Uno, I think Uno takes the same approach, but Flutter kind of like draws everything, right? So it looks pixel perfect across all the platforms. That's just not the route that we took. We are convinced that it should look and feel the same way as it should belong on that platform, right? So that's just the difference there. That's also why there's always like, oh, Flutter is going to win. No, Flutter just has a different audience, right? And all the other kind of like products that have to do with this. So same thing with like a UI slider and a seek bar, right? That's another example. We just call it a slider, and then whatever it is, we're going to do that. The way this is all kind of enabled is what I already mentioned with like the layer underneath that with Xamarin.iOS and Xamarin.Android. The Xamarin name is going away, so we rebranding that now for .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. And that kind of like follows the pattern that the .NET framework has been doing for a long time. You just have this basic set of C# libraries, system.NET, system.io, et cetera, and on top of that, we kind of like sprinkle the specific libraries. We are building wrappers for those that allow you to invoke all that platform native stuff on iOS and Android. And for every API on that platform, we're kind of like writing code to enable you to invoke those APIs on that platform, which is, it sounds super simple, but it's actually super hard because each platform kind of like has thousands of APIs themselves, right? So we have to kind of like map that, all of that, and make sure that it all goes well. So yeah, that's what we do. For Android, same thing. Then we have all these kind of like APIs that are previously called Xamarin Essentials. So .NET Maui Xamarin Forms is a UI framework, right? So with UI elements, but there is also a lot of APIs that are common across different platforms. Android, iOS, Windows, like saving preferences, like getting text messages, interacting with the clipboard, the flashlight, getting your geolocation, right? That kind of stuff, which isn't necessarily UI, but it's still very common across the platforms. So James Montemagno, if you've been looking into this, you probably know his name, has created like all these different libraries for all these different things. At some point, we all put them together, called it Xamarin Essentials, and now with .NET Maui, we're taking it a step further, and it's just in namespaces where you would kind of like expect them, because Essentials, if you don't know the whole history, it doesn't really make sense to call it Essentials, right? So now it's just under, I don't know, Microsoft.Maui, sensors, geolocation, something like that. I don't know from the top of my head, but it's kind of like, it's just functions inside of your kind of like framework, right, where you would expect them to be. So that's really cool. All kinds of functionality there as well. It says demo right here. I'm gonna skip over this one because I'm gonna build up to that epic demo at the end, which has all of the ingredients right here, which is going to be amazing or fail miserably. So let's just go to the next one. What is Blazor, right? Does anyone not know what Blazor is? Oh, really? Well, this part is for you. Which is fine, I don't expect anyone, but Blazor is, getting a lot of attention. Web development without JavaScript, that's always kind of like the popular term to describe it, right? Because if you think about these single page applications on the web today, you think about these rich applications with like grids and dialogues and data entry and all these kinds of cool stuff, menu structures, and whenever you go to the same application on your mobile device, then it all kind of like is very responsive and you have the same application, but it just works better suited for like your mobile viewport, so that's all great. But if you think about these applications, then you automatically also think about Angular and React and Vue, and those are all based on JavaScript, right? Now, I can stand here and make jokes about JavaScript, and that's not how I am. I'm a classy guy, and by the time that I do it, there will be new 20 frameworks out there already, right? So I'm not going to do that. But all jokes aside, like if it's about JavaScript or TypeScript or whatever you're going to use, whenever you have to switch context, that's just not great, right? Like that demo for like the voting poll thing, I had to write JavaScript, which I don't typically do, and I kind of know how it works. So I used a little ChatGPT, but who has used like ChatGPT, right? Like the way I'm doing it wrong. Obviously, because all these people are like, oh yeah, I use it all the time, it's amazing. And then I use it and it's like, it gets me like 80, 90% there, but then I'm like stuck for the last 10% and I'm like, the time that I spent down at the last 10%, I could have done all the rest, understood what I've done, and now fixed the last, right? Does that make any sense? Yeah. No? Yeah? Oh, see? Oh, phew, I'm not the only one. Okay, good. Little side step there. So, but you have to look up, you have to switch context, like what am I doing again? How does that work in JavaScript? Which is just not great. That will eat into your productivity. So why not make it possible to run everything in C#, the stuff that we love, and keep using the same ecosystem. And instead of downloading half of the internet with NPM packages, just download a quarter of the internet in NuGet packages, right? That's much better. So that's why we, and I can say we, I had nothing to do with it, but I work at Microsoft, so we invented Blazor. And that's basically everything that you can do, single page application, rich applications, but now based on C#. You don't have to touch JavaScript if that's what you want. You can still have like interoperability with it if that's what you need. And you will probably be, let's be honest, you will probably need that at some point. But you can do a lot, most of it with C#. With the tooling, Visual Studio Code, never leave the IDE, IntelliSense, you will get all the things, NuGet packages, and 20 years of .NET framework that you can build on, so that's really cool. It is built on top of ASP.NET, so on the left we have like all the web UI things, MVC, Razor pages, single page applications we have right now. I think that actually works on Angular as well. We have that in the templates. And then we have like all the kind of like invisible services as well, right? Like the REST APIs, HTTP APIs, SignalR is there, see? Workers, gRPC, all of that, and Blazor is now part of that family as well. We have a couple of more variations now, but kind of like started with these two, Blazor Server and Blazor, let's just pull it up right now, Blazor WebAssembly. Blazor Server actually a vital part of that is SignalR. Because how it works is Blazor Server is kind of like more your traditional approach. The application still lives on the server side, but it is a single page application, right? So it only kind of like replaces the parts of the document object model that need to change. So every click has to go back and forth through the server, and that happens through a SignalR connection. You probably have seen and recognized a Blazor application, even if you didn't maybe know it, because they will have, like, if you will not interact for it with some time, or you do some other thing, you lose your internet connection, there will come up a little screen with like trying to reconnect, right? We've seen some of that. That's probably the SignalR connection that they are trying to reestablish again. So that's how that works. And then kind of like more alike your Blazor WebAssembly, more alike your JavaScript applications, you have Blazor WebAssembly where the whole application is downloaded to the client and then run from there, right? So that's super fast depending on the machine, of course, but that directly communicates with the browser and you don't have to go back and forth. Each have their pro and cons. I have a next slide about that. And of course, like if you're working with .NET, then you probably know that the applications are architected now in a way that we provide the .NET framework with the application, right? So if you're going to download the client application, then you also have to provide the whole .NET framework that has to run on that. I don't have the most recent numbers for .NET 7 and .NET 8, but I know for .NET 6, the .NET framework DLL was trimmed down to like 1 megabyte. So that's like your average cat GIF, right? So it shouldn't be too bad, but you know, if you are operating in parts of the world where data is very costly, then that's something that you might want to consider. So don't read all of this, but I think kind of like the important parts are at the bottom down there. Like Blazor Server, you're gonna have that persistent connection, right? If there's no connection, the SignalR connection, then you can't do anything with your application. And you have a higher UI latency. If you're gonna notice it, yes or no, that's up for debate, but it has to make a round trip to the server for each thing that you do, basically. So there's always going to be a higher latency. For WebAssembly, you have that larger download size that I just mentioned. Slower runtime performance, again, a bit depending on what you're actually running on. If you run on a thin client, then it's going to be worse. If you run on a very beefy gaming machine, then it's going to be great, right? So there you have it. So now we have all these variations. Actually, one is missing here. We also have Blazor United, which was introduced in .NET 8. I should have checked if there's a talk on that somewhere, probably. But that kind of like combines server and WebAssembly, and you can render the one part on the server and the one part on the client. Super amazing stuff. Go check it out. But we also have a hybrid one, Blazor Hybrid, and I will talk about that next. I was going to go to a demo, but we're still working up to that epic demo. It's going to be like, I run out of time, like, oh, there's going to be this cool demo, and then I run out of time, and I was like, everyone is disappointed. No, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Okay, so .NET Maui and Blazor, the best of both worlds, if you ask me. And I made this wonderful PowerPoint presentation, which took way too long, so we're going to watch it together. Okay. And so we have now Blazor, which makes it possible to write all this cool stuff for the web. We have .NET Maui, which makes all the platforms available besides Windows, basically. So we're running on iOS, Android, Windows, Mac OS, all these kinds of things. iPad OS, which is just iOS with a different name. How cool would it be if we could put these two together and now we have one solution and we call that Blazor Hybrid, right? So we can run all the Blazor technology, but now we can also reach all these platforms. Obviously, you can do that from the browser, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And now you can run that natively on all of these platforms. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, wouldn't that be cool? Okay, kidding. So with .NET Maui Blazor, you can build all these cross-platform native apps that run on all these platforms: Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android, which are not coincidentally all the platforms that .NET Maui supports, right? I'm actually missing Tizen here. Tizen is from Samsung, which is also was supported for Xamarin Forms, also for .NET Maui, but it is supported by Samsung directly, and you can also run all these applications on like your TV, your refrigerator, your watches, all that kind of stuff. Really, really cool stuff. But you have to do a little thing extra. And you can run it all there. And I didn't mention that in just now, but you can cut up your Blazor applications in a reusable Razor class library. So you can just take your little component, stick that in a separate project, or in a separate project is going to be a separate assembly. You can distribute that through NuGet if that's what you want, and make other people use that as well. And those Razor class libraries, those reusable components, can be used without any changes with Blazor Hybrid as well. And it also doesn't matter if you're using Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly. WebAssembly, you can just mix and match that with all the variations that are out there. So if you kind of like architect your application the right way, you can reuse a lot of code that way. So that's cool. And what is really cool here, what the real superpower is that you have full platform access. So if you're running your Blazor application, then you're bound to that sandbox, right? You're bound to a sandbox where you cannot access the file system and you cannot access all kinds of things, which is a good thing if you ask me, that you don't go to the wrong website and suddenly, poof, your hard drive is formatted, right? That wouldn't be very cool. The good news is with Blazor Hybrid, you can totally format your hard drive with Blazor. Right? So that's kind of like the difference. But because it runs as a application, Blazor is already .NET. So the only thing kind of web about it is the UI. We're rendering HTML and CSS, that kind of stuff, but the application itself is not kind of like interpreted through JavaScript or whatever. It is already a .NET application, and we have .NET already running through .NET Maui on iOS, macOS, Android, etc. So we can just run that application directly through that on all of these platforms. And you can access everything. All the Essentials APIs, you can access the geolocation, the file system, the flashlight you can turn on and off if that's what you want. You could do all these things through a Blazor application just as well as a regular .NET Maui application. So I think I basically told you all of this. Oh, coming back, well, it's not really like Visual Basic, but more about WinForms and WPF, because the way this is implemented is through a Blazor web view, which is just a component in .NET Maui, but that component also works for WinForms and WPF. So if you still have a WinForms or WPF application, with chances are you have that for your J job, right? You're working in that legacy application. As long as you can get it to at least .NET 6, you can get that Blazor web view as a component inside of your application. And now you can start using those reusable Razor class libraries inside of that Blazor web view and kind of like modernize your application from the inside out, right? So that's a very cool path that you could take to finally get rid of that legacy application. And for the rest, there's multiple ways. I will show you in a little bit how to go about this, what you can do with your application. This also applies to .NET Maui. You can choose to create a full hybrid application. And from the developer side, that's very interesting because you can reuse a lot of your web skills and Blazor Blazor components that you have. On the other side, the user experience, if you use all that web stuff, it's going to be hard to pass that off as kind of like your native application. So your users might not always be very fond of those kinds of applications. But what you could do is also use one piece because you have that Blazor component that you spend a lot of time on. Just use that one as a little part inside of your .NET Maui application, which is native for all the rest. Or you can make your whole .NET Maui application a Blazor web view and make a whole hybrid application that way, right? So there is a mix and match possible for all these things. Now, I already said that, but I can't say it enough because that's a question that always comes up. Blazor Hybrid runs as a 100% natively application on your device if you're using Blazor Hybrid. So if you typically go debug a Blazor application, a little terminal will come up with a server that serves up like your Blazor content, not needed for .NET Maui. It's already the .NET application. It can run directly on your device. No HTTP requests, so it behaves mostly like Blazor WebAssembly, if you will. You don't need to go back and forth, unless, of course, you need to get data from some kind of backend, but you can totally create a offline application that you download from the store once and then use in all kinds of offline scenarios. The only kind of thing that you kind of do is replace the UI with XAML or C#, throw it all away, and use HTML and kind of like CSS and mix that with your Blazor stuff. Okay. Yes, time for that epic demo. Okay. I'm getting nervous now. Again, take out your phones. Gerald.fyi/Bob. Okay? Oh, I hope this works. Okay. There is a video on YouTube from where I do this session or some variation and this demo, and it horribly fails. I'll talk, maybe if I remember, I'll tell you how it ended after this, but it's kind of like fun. I'll do the demo first. You can win prizes. So Gerald.fyi/Bob, you should get a little thing where you enter your name first, and then you can do guesses, right? So you can guess all you want. It's not going to do anything right now. And I did use ChatGPT to come up with the name for this. So it's Bob Ross. Bob Ross doodles, right? And it's kind of like a Pictionary game, right? So I draw something, you're going to guess what it is, and the first one that guesses it right will get a prize. I actually have 2 books, so you can choose whichever you want. ASP.NET Best Practices or the MVVM pattern in .NET Maui. Choose whatever you like most, whoever's going to win. I'll just run the demo first, see if it works. And then talk you through this whole project right here, right, in the time that we have remaining here. So you have that kind of like guessing application, which is a Blazor application running on Azure. And what I did, I built a couple of, I need to do a couple of things more. I built a couple of applications. So the one that's coming up right now is a desktop application. Well, it's a .NET Maui application, so it runs on all the platforms. And it's coming up right here. And I have this touch screen, so I can just draw things, right? Super cool. And whenever I press start, it's going to send a signal to my SignalR server that's also hosted in Azure with like, hey, I'm going to start a game. I need a random word that I need to draw, right? So it's going to generate a random word, and it's going to send that to my Blazor Hybrid application, which is super impressive, which I have here on my Android device, which is this one. It's a real Android device right here, but I mirrored my screen. And it's going to say the secret word. It's going to send a signal, because this is now connected to my device right here. And I'm going to see that secret word just to me, so I'm going to not leave it on the screen right here. I'm going to draw, you're going to guess, and it's all going to be amazing, right? Everyone's going to clap and throw with chairs, and it's going to be super wild. Okay, so what happened for the other demo a while ago? It didn't work. It didn't work. So then what I did then is everyone could send me an email. And the first one that got it right got the prize. I spent I was feeling so bad about it not working, so I spent like a whole day replying to everyone. Thank you so much, I'm so sorry it didn't work. Anyway, you had to be there. So it's gonna work this time, so don't worry. So we got all that. See, I got colors too, which is really cool. Oh, no. Marmot. Okay. So the guesses already work. Okay, please don't mess this up. So I have all of this. Yeah, I think that's kind of like, okay, let's get this from down here. Let's see if it's still not a marmot. No. Okay. If I'm gonna press start, I should be getting a word here. Oh yes. Oh, okay. It's not too hard. So pay attention, right? It's gonna go fast. Okay. See, there's a timer right there. We can see the timer. Okay. Red. Okay. Tree. No, it's not a tree. Oh wait, I'll just draw something else just for the effect here. Woo. It's actually quite accurate. Lips. Yes, Luke. No applause. No applause for Luke. Come on, let's do it for Luke. Woo-hoo. And my demo worked. Okay, great. I'm always very thankful that my demo worked. Okay, Luke, see me after the session, and you can pick a book or whatever. I also have stickers here for all the rest, so come harass me for that. Okay, cool. So this is, again, silly little thing. And the fun thing is, like I said, this is a .NET Maui application, and this works best, obviously, if you do it on, see, it actually set the lips. If you do it on a desktop, because I need to draw here. But that same application is deployed here to my Android device. And you can see it has the exact same interface. But if I hold it like this, then I can at least draw a little thing. See, without any changes, I can just deploy it to my phone. I should definitely optimize it, the UI, to work on a little viewport like this, but you can just deploy that same code to a Android device and it will just work as well. And maybe if someone still has it open, can you still guess? Does it actually show it here as well? I guess it should, but maybe that's too much. I don't think maybe it blocks all the guesses because now it has been successfully guessed, so maybe that's not going to work. So yeah, how this all fits together. So I have that. Let's start with the server. So this is a SignalR server. We have that same kind of like program CS. This is just an ASP.NET Server application, much simpler than the other one because I don't need all the views and that kind of stuff. So this just does add SignalR and add singleton game state. That's actually a good tip right here. If you want to do some kind of state shared across all of you, you want to have a singleton because else each one is going to have a state of its own, which is not really what you want with a game. So you want to do that as a singleton. You have to think about what you're doing here. And then map hub, Bob Ross hub with /doodle, right? So the exact same thing that we saw earlier. And then now in this hub, we have a little bit more. So we have that game state, which I use to actually dependency inject in here as well. We have this send guess, right? So you're sending me the guesses with this little guess model right here, which is super simple. The player name, the value, I actually have the date, and is it correct, yes or no? know. So we have all that. Whoops. So we have a couple of these functions that you can do and some logic to, have a guess received. It's going to show that in that little list on the side right there. And you can see the same magic strings. But the cool thing is that the syntax is like super similar to how it was on JavaScript, right? So we still do have like, do we have the connection right here? No, it's not in the hub. We're in the hub. But you'll see in a little bit that we have that connection coming in from the client. So that code is like one-on-one, almost the same as that we saw in JavaScript. So that's really cool. So here we have some of the game logic inside of that hub, which is cool. And then we have a couple of applications here. So let's start with the Maui one. So that's the one that you saw on my screen. We have this Maui program, and what's cool with .NET Maui is that with the transition from Xamarin Forms to .NET Maui, cross-platform programming is hard enough as it is. You will have bad times not really liking it. You'll curse it. I'll be honest, it's going to happen. But everything that we can kind of do to take that pain away, to lower the threshold, we will do. So we kind of like still adopted the app host builder here from ASP.NET. So this should look very familiar if you've been working with ASP.NET and you have that builder and you can just say, hey, use Maui app, use Maui community toolkit, configure fonts, and you can do dependency injection the exact same way. So you will see at least some familiar stuff even if you've never worked with .NET Maui before. Now, then typically what you do with .NET Maui is you create your UI in XAML. You can also do it in code if that's what you want, and we're investigating some other things, but XAML is still a hot thing with Microsoft developers. So we have everything in XAML right here, but we changed the syntax just enough to confuse you again, because that's what we do. And so we have this grid and horizontal stack layout with a couple of buttons, right? That were the buttons at the top, and they lay out horizontal. And we have that grid, we have that border for all the colors, which I totally stole from Sean, but don't tell him. And then we have this drawing view, right, which is a component from the .NET Maui Community Toolkit, and that's what makes it possible to draw the things. We have an awesome, vibrant community with all these kinds of components out there, free for you to use, mostly open source. There's also paid components which are superb from like other vendors, but super cool. And then we have the collection view, which has the list with all the guesses right here. Data binding built-in, et cetera, et cetera. But if we look at like kind of like the SignalR code, then we have that hub connection, right? So I installed the NuGet package. I need to install it here because it's not something that comes out of the box with .NET Maui. Need to install that Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR client package. And then I have that hub connection. And I can say, hey, hub connection, okay, I know that. New hub connection builder. With URL, I have that URL right here. And then .build. Almost the exact same as JavaScript, but now with nicer syntax because we're C# and not JavaScript. And then you can see the exact same syntax. Hub connection on, you can actually strongly type the types here, of course, because we are now in a strongly typed language, so we can do that. We're still doing these magic strings right here, but you can bring them into some kind of like constants class or whatever to make that a little less painful, but you're still stuck with them. And then you can say, hey, whenever this guess received, signal is received, we're going to actually do this thing. And I'm going to put it in that collection view and scroll to the top so that it always shows at the top, right? So we have that thing right here. And on the game started, the timer starts, game over, the timer is going to stop, and we're going to say, hey, game over. In this case, Luke guessed it correctly, right? So that's all signals going back and forth to Azure, to the server, to that hub that we just saw, to this client thing. Now, this is then just a plain Blazor application, which is the one that you saw on your phones, which is not super complicated. You had to kind of like enter your name first, and whenever that is null or empty, please tell us your name first. I'm going to remember that somehow, and then you can add your guesses, right? Tap, 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 do your guesses, send async, and this is going to have that same code with that hub connection, and for the signals, game over winner, so you'll have all these signals going back and forth. That should not be a surprise anymore right now. So yeah, and then this one, I don't know why I did this for iOS. That's interesting. But this is a signal that is only received by, so technically, if you're like a super smart Uber hacker on your phone, super quick, I don't think this code is open source. You could, intercept the signal because I'm sending it to everyone, right? But I only implemented actually handling that signal on the client that I have right here. So there's also all kinds of ways to kind of like ignore signals if you don't need them or whatever. And then in my Blazor hybrid application, that's the one that you saw on my phone here for that secret word that comes up. You can see this is kind of like, if you've seen like the Blazor templates before and the .NET Maui templates before, we kind of like smashed them together and said like, hey, this is now a Blazor hybrid application. So you can see that XAML still, but this is a full hybrid application. So the whole application is like that Blazor application. You can see the hamburger menu here with still all the other menu options that I didn't remove. And you can see it's actually responsive, right? So if I would hold this sideways, then you can see, hey, now there's enough room to actually show the full menu all the time. So I don't have the hamburger menu anymore because Blazor, has Bootstrap built in. So all the responsiveness that you have to do a little bit extra for in .NET Maui, in Blazor Hybrid, you don't need to do all that. It's built in because we're using Bootstrap for the CSS, right? You can use all the power of HTML, CSS that you're used to inside of this application as well. So I've got that, and this is a full hybrid application, so I made the whole screen a Blazor web view, as you can see here. And then here I just say, hey, I want to use this index.html as a wrapper, which is kind of like because, that's how Blazor works, but it's really not that impressive because we only need that as kind of like the holder for this div right here with the app, because we're going to inject the app in here, right? The kind of like important thing right here is see that root component, selector app. So that's, this is the HTML selector that you're going to load the app in. And then this component type is actually the bootstrapper for the whole Blazor thing, right? So we're going to go to that main.razor. And this is a Blazor router object. And here it's going to scan the assembly for all kind of routes that are there for Blazor. And then whenever you go to /counter, it's going to go to the /counter page, et cetera, et cetera. And then here from these pages, we have like this index. So whenever app page is /, so whenever we don't have a root, it's going to go to this one, which is the only one that I've implemented. But if you want to go to the counter one, then you're going to go to /counter, right? So that kind of bootstraps it. And then from here, you can do everything in Blazor, right? And it will just run. And you can do all these things. So if I want to do that geolocation thing, right? It's right here for me to use. Maui devices.sensors geolocation. Use that as a API inside of your Blazor application on this .NET Maui Blazor hybrid app, and it will work as you would expect it to be. One thing, if you're going to run this on devices, you don't have the browser sandbox, but those apps running on the actual phones, they definitely are also in a sandbox as well. So you're going to get into a new world of pain, which is called the permissions. So you're going to have to do the iOS permissions, Android permissions, add in a manifest like, hey, I would like to use these permissions, and then request them runtime, blah, 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 blah. You're going to have fun finding that out. But yeah, so here for the secret word, again, it's not going to be a huge surprise. Hub connection. I have the signal, don't tell. It's going to get that secret word back from the server, and it's going to show me that here in this very simplistic UI. So that's how that all ties together. It was a super quick overview, but I hope you could follow it a little bit. So I don't know about you, but I'm ready for another cup of coffee. Phew, this is hard work. But we're almost there, just a couple of slides more. We have a very extensive sample that we also use for like benchmarks and testing all of our stuff. We updated for the latest .NET versions, which is a .NET Podcasts app. And it kind of like has all the ingredients that I've showed you here today as well. It's all open source. It also has like the full backend. You can deploy all the microservices that are in there to your Azure account. Please don't forget to turn them off whenever you're done with playing with it. Ask me how I know. It will burn through your credits really, really quickly. But it's really cool. Like it actually has a hosted version as well. Let me just very quickly pull it up. You can go to .NETpodcasts.com, and it kind of like mimics your podcast application, right? So you can't actually get it on the App Store and all these kinds of things. And this is kind of like to kind of like your landing page. Okay, very cool. Sign in. There's nothing to actually sign in, but we're a professional application. And you can see all these podcasts, and these are actual podcasts, right, with actual episodes. I think they're actually refreshed to some extent as well. So we have this .NET Maui podcast, we have .NET Rocks, you probably all know that one. And whenever you go in here, you will see actual episodes from that podcast. Oh, January 25. See, that's from a couple of days ago. So that's really cool. And this mimics a couple of things. So if I start playing here, we won't actually hear anything because I didn't hook that up. And I always have this weird bug that it doesn't play in my browser. It's on my side because this definitely works. But you can see the little player bar right here. And this is a Blazor application. And what's really cool, if you go to the repository, we also have a mobile app. built in .NET Maui with all native components. All the XAML stuff is there. But we also have a Blazor hybrid application. So the same mobile app, but now built with Blazor hybrid, and it shares components with the website. So you can see whatever approach you take to building that app, you can see the two different things and how that could work with the different applications here. But what's really cool is that it also has like the SignalR connection, the SignalR stuff in here. So you will have that listen together. And I can create a new room. My name is Gerald, open room. And now whenever I'm already listening to something and you can join with this code and you can see that people will join and you will sync with where I'm listening. And you could also send like these responses. You will see that pop up on your screen as well. Like, oh, I like this joke. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, no, this wasn't great. I want to put a green thing in a plastic box. That's the thing that you want to remember. So, you know, you can do all these things, and this works with a SignalR connection. All open source, super cool, extensive example if you want to look through that. So then kind of like an overview of like, hey, with all these options, what is best for me? The answer for every development question is like, it depends, right? So if you want to go for reach, if you want to run it even on your refrigerator that has a browser on it, go with Blazor. That will run everywhere where there is a browser available, so you could just go there. That is kind of like a PWA or just a regular website. If you want to have a little bit of both, maybe you already have a Blazor application, some reusable components, then you can go hybrid, right? Maybe you have web skills already or native skills already and you want to look into the other technology. That's totally something that you can do with Blazor. And if you want to have the full power of the platform that you're running on, you can go with like Maui, or, you know, if you're not going to ever run on Android or iOS, go with WinUI if you know that it's always going to be Windows, but then you're going to have that power on that platform because it's built for that one platform, right? Oh, no, I don't know how that came here. Okay. So thank you so much for joining. I hope you will enjoy the rest of NDC. I have the book here for look. I have some stickers. Thank you so much.